The first time he noticed her, it
Did
wasn't
you
the
hear
way
what happened to
students
Mr.
usually
Anderson?
notice teachers. It wasn't her looks, though she carried a quiet kind of beauty that didn't need attention to be felt. It was the way she spoke. Every word carried conviction, yet there was something behind her composure, a shadow of someone who'd seen the world, been bruised by it, and learned to carry grace anyway. He was 23, finishing a late degree after taking time off to work. Older than most of the class, more aware of people's subtleties. That's what drew him in, the small things others missed. The way her fingers brushed stray hair behind her ear when she was deep in thought. The soft pause before she asked a difficult question. The gentle humor in her tone that made even the dullest subjects feel alive. She was 40, confident yet distant. Her name, Miss Carver, carried a kind of quiet authority. Students admired her, but never got close. She kept her world carefully divided. Mentor and mentee, professional and personal, order and emotion. But the first time their eyes met during a discussion, something shifted, something unspoken but unmistakably real. He wasn't trying to cross any line. Not at first. But curiosity has its own gravity, and the more he learned from her, the more he wanted to learn about her. Not as a teacher, but as a person. He started staying after class, helping organize papers or tidy up. Small things, harmless on the surface. Yet each time, conversation lingered a little longer. She noticed, of course. She always noticed everything. The first time he made her laugh, her guard cracked just slightly. The sound wasn't loud, but it was warm, real, like sunlight sneaking through drawn curtains. That moment stayed with him. He didn't dare admit it, but something about it felt forbidden and magnetic all at once. One evening, rain tapped softly against the classroom windows. Most students had gone home, the hallways quiet except for the hum of the old lights. He stayed behind, pretending to review notes. She looked up from her desk, raising a brow. "You're still here." He smiled lightly. "You make the rain sound like a reason to stay." A hint of amusement flickered in her eyes before she looked away. "You're crossing the line, you know." "Maybe," he said softly, heart pounding. "Or maybe you drew it closer." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged. Her expression faltered for the briefest second, revealing something vulnerable, almost scared. Then she composed herself again, standing from her chair. "Go home," she said gently, but her voice trembled ever so slightly. As he left, he glanced back once more. Through the glass, he saw her watching him go, her hand resting against the window frame, her gaze distant. He realized then it wasn't just about admiration anymore. The line between respect and something deeper had begun to blur, and neither of them could pretend not to feel it. The days that followed carried a strange stillness between them. It wasn't uncomfortable, it was charged. Every time he stepped into class, he felt the air change ever so slightly. Her presence, once purely professional, now carried something magnetic, something quietly alive beneath her calm exterior. She didn't speak of that night again. Neither did he. But in the way she handed him papers, in the rare moments when her eyes met his longer than necessary, he could tell she remembered too. It was like they were both standing on opposite sides of a line neither dared cross, but both inching closer to it every day. He began to notice more than before. The faint scent of coffee that lingered on her when she arrived early. The way her black hair shimmered with hints of brown under the morning sun streaming through the window. The soft laugh lines at the corners of her mouth when she smiled, small reminders of life's quiet moments. She wasn't like the girls his age. There was no pretense with her. Her confidence wasn't loud, it was steady. When she spoke, people listened, not out of fear, but because her words carried truth. And yet, there was a kind of loneliness in her eyes, the kind that comes from years of holding things together alone. One afternoon, he stayed after class again. She was grading papers, her focus sharp but her movements tired. He hesitated before speaking. "You ever get tired of pretending you don't feel things?" Her pen froze. Slowly, she looked up. "That's not a fair question." "Maybe not," he said quietly, "but it's an honest one." For a moment, she didn't respond. Then she leaned back in her chair, exhaling softly. "You think feelings are simple?" That we can just let them happen? No, he said. But I think sometimes we're afraid of the wrong things. Her gaze softened. You don't understand the cost of what you're implying. Maybe not. But maybe you don't understand how much it's already costing you to hold it back. The silence stretched between them again, heavy but electric. She looked down at her hands, as if searching for composure. You're still crossing the line, she whispered. Then stop drawing it closer, he said, voice low but steady. She stood, brushing past him toward the shelves. The faintest tremor in her hands betrayed what her face tried to hide. You should go, she murmured. He nodded, but he didn't move right away. Instead, he said softly, You teach people to be honest with themselves. Why can't you? Her breath caught. For the first time, she had no answer. That night, as he walked home, the conversation replayed in his mind. Every word, every look. He wasn't sure what scared him more, how much he wanted her, or how much she already meant to him. And somewhere deep down, he knew this wasn't just a passing crush. It was the start of something neither of them were ready for, but both were powerless to stop. The next week felt different, like the world around them had become aware of something it shouldn't know. Every time their eyes met, there was a silent pause, a lingering awareness that neither wanted to name. The classroom, once filled with idle chatter and the clatter of pencils, now felt like a stage where every gesture, every word carried double meaning. He began to arrive earlier, sometimes just to see her alone, before the mask of professionalism settled over her face. He'd find her standing by the window, coffee in hand, the morning light tracing the soft outline of her face. The way her dark hair fell loosely over her shoulder, the calm poise that hid the storm within. Morning, he'd say, trying to sound casual. Morning, she'd reply, voice warm but guarded. One day, he found her rearranging books in the corner cabinet. The stack was too high, and she stood on tiptoe to reach the upper shelf. Without thinking, he stepped behind her, steadying the books before they fell. His hand brushed hers, just a fleeting touch, but it was enough. The air between them tightened. Her breath hitched, and she turned slowly, their faces suddenly close, too close. He could see the faint freckles across her cheeks, the soft pink hue rising there, the uncertainty flickering in her dark eyes. I told you, she said quietly, you shouldn't blur the line. His voice dropped to a whisper. You keep saying that, but you're the one standing closer every time. She looked at him for a long moment, neither retreating nor giving in. Then, almost imperceptibly, she stepped back. You don't understand the kind of risk this is. Maybe not, he admitted, but I understand what it feels like to want something you can't explain. Her eyes softened, but there was pain there too, pain born from restraint. You're too young to play with consequences. And you're too careful to feel alive, he said gently. Her lips parted, as if to argue, but no words came. The silence said enough. He could feel the push and pull between them, the tension that had no place, yet filled every corner of the room. The next few days, she avoided being alone with him. Her tone became colder, her words clipped, but her eyes betrayed her. When she thought no one noticed, he'd catch her gaze lingering just a second too long. And in that second, the truth lived, undeniable and dangerous. One afternoon, he stayed late again under the pretense of finishing a project. She came to the door, stopping halfway as if torn between duty and desire. You shouldn't still be here, she said softly. I was hoping you'd say that, he replied. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then she smiled faintly, a smile that held both surrender and sadness. You really don't know when to stop, do you? Not when something feels real, he whispered. That was the moment she realized. No matter how many lines she drew, he would always find the space between them. And worse, she was starting to want him to. The tension between them had become something that neither of them could ignore. It followed them through every hallway, every quiet exchange, every accidental glance that lingered too long. And yet, it wasn't reckless. It was restrained, like two souls circling the same fire, knowing they'd get burned if they stepped too close. That Friday evening, the campus was nearly empty. The hum of fluorescent lights echoed through the quiet corridors. He stayed behind again, claiming he needed extra time, to finish an essay. She was still in her classroom, the faint sound of papers shuffling, carrying down the hall. Something about knowing she was there made him stay. When he finally gathered the courage to knock on her door, she looked up from her desk, startled but not surprised. "You're still here?" she asked, her tone calm but her eyes wary. "Couldn't focus at home," he said. "It's quieter here." She smiled faintly, setting her pen down. "Quiet can be dangerous when your thoughts are loud." He stepped closer. "Then maybe I don't want quiet." Her expression softened for a brief moment, and then she sighed, brushing a strand of her long black hair behind her ear. The gesture was simple, but it disarmed him completely. "You really don't understand the risk I'm taking by even talking to you like this." He sat down across from her, voice low but steady. "Then why are you still talking to me?" That question hung in the air, sharp and honest. For the first time, she didn't have an answer. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, exhaling deeply. "Because you remind me of something I forgot," she finally said. "Something uncomplicated." He smiled softly. "You make everything complicated." Her laugh came quietly, hesitant but real. "That's because you don't know when to walk away." He tilted his head. "And you don't really want me to, do you?" She froze, her eyes meeting his. The room felt smaller somehow, the glow of the setting sun painting her skin with a soft gold warmth. She looked beautiful in that light, graceful, thoughtful, and human in a way he'd never seen her before. Her voice broke the silence. "You're crossing a line again." He smiled faintly. "You keep moving it." That made her laugh again, but this time her voice trembled. She stood up, walked around the desk, and leaned against it, arms crossed but expression conflicted. "You don't make this easy." "Neither do you," he replied, his gaze unwavering. For a long time, neither spoke. The ticking clock on the wall filled the silence, each second stretching the moment thinner. Finally, she whispered, "If anyone saw us like this, they won't," he said softly. "But even if they did, I wouldn't regret it." Her breath caught at his words. She looked away, but he saw it, the faintest hint of a smile playing at the corner of her lips, fragile but genuine. He rose from his chair, stopping just short of touching her hand on the desk. Their fingers hovered inches apart, close enough to feel the warmth, far enough to stay within reason. For that brief heartbeat, the whole world seemed to pause. Then she whispered, almost pleading, "Go home." He nodded but didn't move right away. "You know I'll come back." Her voice cracked slightly. "That's what I'm afraid of." As he left, her eyes followed him, half in fear, half in longing, knowing the line they were both trying to respect was already gone. It had been a week since that after-hours encounter, yet the echo of it lingered like a half-forgotten melody. Every word, every look, every breath between them still lived somewhere in the quiet of his mind. He tried to distract himself. Late-night runs, endless playlists, meaningless conversations. But her presence had become a rhythm his thoughts couldn't unhear. When Monday came, he saw her again, standing by the window before class, her hair tucked behind one ear, sunlight catching the gold threads in her dark hair. She looked calm, composed, as though the tension that had nearly broken through the walls between them didn't exist. But when her eyes met his across the room, the calm cracked just slightly. Their gazes held, long enough for him to see it. The hesitation, the pull, the quiet storm she was trying to bury beneath her professionalism. Later that day, as the building emptied, rain began to fall, soft, persistent, washing the windows in streaks of silver. He had stayed late again, pretending to finish an assignment, pretending not to wait. But when she appeared in the doorway, holding her umbrella and hesitating, he knew she wasn't pretending either. "You're still here," she said, the same words as before, but this time her tone was softer. He smiled faintly. "Seems like I never leave when you're around." Her eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with something close to fear. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Then stop looking at me like you want to hear them." That silenced her. For a moment, all that could be heard was the rain and the soft hum of the ceiling light. She set her umbrella down and walked toward him slowly, arms crossed, a quiet war behind her calm. "You think this is simple," she said. "It's not. You're young. You don't know how deep this could cut. He stood, voice low but steady. I don't care how deep it cuts. I just know it's real. Her lips parted as if to argue, but the words never came. Instead, her hand lifted almost unconsciously and brushed a drop of rain from his hair. The touch was fleeting, but it burned through him like a spark. He didn't move. Neither did she. The air between them thickened, charged with everything unspoken. You're crossing the line again, she whispered, the words trembling this time. He met her gaze. You drew it closer. Her breath hitched, and for one suspended heartbeat, it felt like the world tilted towards something irreversible. Then thunder cracked in the distance, startling them both. She stepped back, eyes darting toward the window as though the sky itself had intervened. I can't do this, she said quietly, almost to herself. He nodded, swallowing the ache in his chest. Then why does it feel like you already are? Her silence was answer enough. When she finally turned away, her reflection lingered in the rain-soaked glass, graceful, conflicted, and achingly human. He stood there long after she left, listening to the rain fade into the night, realizing that sometimes the moments that almost happen are the ones that stay forever. The days that followed were a blur of restraint, polite smiles, carefully measured words, glances that lasted a fraction too long before being broken. They spoke less in class, and yet said more in silence than they ever had aloud. Every time she passed him in the hallway, he caught that flicker of something she tried to hide, guilt, longing, maybe both. One evening, as the semester drew to an end, he found himself walking home past the small cafe near campus. Through the window, he saw her, sitting alone, a half-empty cup of coffee on the table, papers scattered before her. She looked different outside the classroom, softer somehow, without the invisible armor she wore around her students. He hesitated. He could walk away and let her keep her peace. But his heart had already made the choice. When the doorbell chimed as he entered, she looked up, surprise flashing across her face, then quickly replaced by a quiet sigh. You shouldn't be here, she murmured. He smiled gently, sitting across from her without asking. You've said that before. This time I mean it. I know, and that's why I am. For a moment, neither spoke. The low hum of the cafe, the scent of coffee, the distant sound of rain against the windows, all of it wrapped around them like a secret no one else could see. You think this is easy for me? She finally said, her voice low, trembling between frustration and sadness. I built walls for a reason. I'm supposed to be the one with control. And yet, he said softly, you're the one running from something that feels right. She looked away, eyes glistening under the warm light. You don't know what right is yet. Then teach me, he said, leaning forward. Isn't that what you're best at? That made her laugh quietly, despite herself. But there was no joy in it, just surrender. You make it sound simple. It's not. You're at the start of everything. I'm already halfway through. He shook his head. You say that like it's a reason not to feel. Her hands tightened around her cup. It's a reason not to destroy what we already have. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers, not bold, but deliberate. She didn't pull away. You haven't destroyed anything, he said softly. You just made me see what real connection feels like. Her breath caught. You shouldn't say things like that. Because they're true? Because they make it harder to pretend. The weight of her words settled between them. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the glass window streaked with faint lines that caught the city lights. She looked at him, finally, really looked, and for a fleeting moment, all her resistance melted away. Her hand turned slightly, their fingers interlacing, just for a breath. Then she pulled back, whispering, "This is madness." He smiled faintly. "Then let's stop fighting it." She exhaled shakily, eyes glancing toward the door. "If we cross that line, there's no going back." He leaned closer, voice barely a whisper. "Then maybe it's time we stop pretending the line is still there." Her lips parted, 1,000 thoughts flickering in her eyes, fear, desire, heartbreak, and something dangerously close to hope. And in that suspended heartbeat, before anyone could move, before the world could catch up, it felt like everything they had been holding back was about to finally break free. The next morning dawned with a strange calm. That heavy quiet that comes after a storm, but before the world dares to move again. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her sitting across that cafe table, her hand briefly entwined with his. It wasn't the touch itself that haunted him. It was what it meant. That in one small, trembling gesture, she had admitted everything she couldn't say out loud. When he walked into campus later that day, she was already there, standing by the window of her classroom, looking out toward the courtyard. The sunlight painted her profile in soft gold. Her black hair fell loose over her shoulders, her expression composed, but her eyes told a different story. He hesitated at the door before entering. When she turned and saw him, something unreadable passed between them. Not surprise, not guilt, just quiet understanding. "We need to talk," she said, her voice calm, almost steady. He nodded. "I know." She gestured for him to sit, then closed the door. The soft click of it sounded final, as if it sealed them off from the rest of the world. For a long time, neither spoke. The tension wasn't sharp anymore. It was heavy, tender, filled with the ache of everything they wanted but couldn't have. Finally, she broke the silence. "What happened last night can't happen again." He looked down, then back up. "Do you regret it?" Her eyes softened. "No," she admitted. "That's what scares me." He leaned forward, voice quiet but firm. "Then why are we pretending this is wrong? You said it yourself. It's real." Her lips parted, then pressed together. "Real doesn't mean right." She took a slow breath, as if steadying herself. "You have a future ahead of you. I have a career that could end with one rumor. We're both standing on something that can't hold our weight." He shook his head. "Then maybe we build something that can." That made her look at him, really look. There was a hint of a smile at the corner of her mouth, a trace of admiration beneath the worry. "You have no idea how impossible that sounds." "Maybe," he said, smiling faintly. "But I've seen the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. You want this too." Her breath hitched. She turned away, pretending to straighten papers on her desk, but her hands were trembling. "You're crossing the line again," she whispered, echoing the words that had started it all. He stood, stepping closer. His voice was low, almost a whisper. You drew it closer." This time, she didn't argue. Her eyes closed, as though the fight within her had finally broken. When she opened them again, there was peace, quiet, sad but beautiful. "I can't promise you forever," she said softly, "but I can promise you this moment." And in that sunlight-filled room, she reached for his hand. No hesitation, no fear, just acceptance. Their fingers intertwined, warm, steady, grounding. It wasn't a confession, and it wasn't a goodbye. It was something in between, the kind of truth that only exists when two people finally stop pretending. Outside, the bell rang, breaking the stillness. She smiled faintly, whispering, "You should go." He nodded, squeezing her hand once before stepping away. As he walked out, he turned back just once, enough to see her watching him, a soft smile lingering on her lips. A smile that said everything words never could. That day, he realized something. Some lines weren't meant to divide. They were meant to bring two people close enough to understand why crossing them was inevitable.